The billionaire's voice thundered through the grand courtroom, echoing against marble walls as his eyes burned with rage. "That woman," he spat, pointing a trembling finger at the maid standing silently before the judge, "laid her hands on my daughter. She beat her until she could barely stand. And I demand justice." Gasps rippled through the room. Cameras flashed. Journalists scribbled frantically. All eyes shifted to the woman at the center of the storm, a maid named Grace. Her dark skin glistened under the harsh fluorescent lights, her uniform crisp but her posture trembling under the weight of accusation. She had been the loyal housekeeper in the Montgomery mansion for nearly 5 years. Never once had she raised her voice, let alone her hand. Yet here she was, branded a monster by the man who once trusted her with his home, his secrets, and most of all, his only daughter. Grace's lips parted but no sound came. Her heart raced so loudly she could barely hear the murmurs around her. She glanced across the courtroom and saw the girl, 16-year-old Lily Montgomery, sitting in a wheelchair. A bruise darkened her cheek. Her arms bore faint marks. The sight broke Grace's heart, for she had loved that child like her own. The judge cleared his throat. "Mr. Montgomery, the court will hear testimony from the victim before drawing conclusions." Everyone leaned forward. Lily's golden hair fell in messy strands around her face. She looked fragile, broken, but there was a fire in her eyes, one that no bruise could erase. Grace closed her eyes, whispering a silent prayer. She remembered every sleepless night she had spent rocking Lily to sleep when nightmares gripped her. Every morning she had braided her hair and slipped small notes of encouragement into her school lunch. And now the same child she had devoted herself to might seal her fate with a single word. The billionaire, Richard Montgomery, leaned protectively toward his daughter. "Go on, sweetheart. Tell them what she did." His tone softened only for her, though it still carried an undertone of fury. Lily's lips trembled. The courtroom fell into silence so heavy it seemed no one dared breathe. Her small hands gripped the edge of her wheelchair. She opened her mouth. But what came out was not what anyone expected. "Grace never hurt me," Lily said firmly, her voice clear despite the lump in her throat. A wave of shock rolled across the room. Richard's face drained of color. "Lily, what are you saying? Look at you. Look at those bruises. Who else could have done this?" Tears welled in Lily's eyes, but she didn't look at her father. Instead, she turned to Grace. "She saved me. She didn't hurt me. Dad, you did." The courtroom erupted in whispers, shouts, and disbelief. The judge slammed his gavel for order, but the words had already taken flight, hanging heavy in the air like thunderclouds before a storm. Richard's mouth fell open. "Lily, that's absurd. You're confused." But Lily cut him off, her voice trembling with both fear and courage. "No, I remember. You were drunk again that night. You were angry because Mom left us. Her words faltered, tears spilling down her cheeks. "You hit me, over and over. Grace came running in. She pulled you off me. She held me while I cried. And when you finally passed out, she carried me to my room and promised I'd be safe. She didn't hurt me. You did." The room froze. Even the journalists lowered their pens for a moment, stunned into silence. Richard's face twisted, his pride battling against the truth that had just been unleashed. His fists clenched, but the eyes of the court were on him, unblinking, unforgiving. Grace felt her knees weaken. She gripped the wooden table before her, tears blurring her vision. Relief and sorrow surged through her at once. Relief, because Lily had spoken the truth. Sorrow, because no child should have to reveal such pain in front of strangers, let alone expose her own father. The judge leaned forward, his voice grave. "Miss Montgomery, are you saying under oath that your father, Richard Montgomery, inflicted these injuries upon you?" "Yes," Lily whispered, her voice breaking. "I tried to protect him, but I can't anymore. I won't let Grace suffer for something she didn't do. She's been more of a mother to me than anyone." Richard staggered back as though struck. His empire, his reputation, his carefully crafted image of power and control, all of it began to crumble with his daughter's confession. Grace wept silently. The bailiff approached her gently, unshackling her wrists. Freedom never felt so heavy. She wanted to run to Lily, but respect for the courtroom held her back. Still, her heart soared with gratitude. The prosecutor, previously aligned with Richard's accusations, shifted uncomfortably. "Your Honor, given this testimony, I request charges against Ms. Grace Johnson be dropped immediately." And he hesitated, glancing at Richard. "A formal investigation into Mr. Montgomery's actions be opened." The gavel struck once more. "So ordered." Richard tried to speak, his voice cracking. "Lily, I—" But Lily turned away, her face buried in her trembling hands. Grace, no longer restrained, crossed the courtroom slowly. She knelt beside Lily's wheelchair, gently taking her hand. "You were so brave," she whispered. "No matter what happens next, remember, you are stronger than you think." The girl clung to her, sobbing into her shoulder. For the first time in days, Grace held her without fear of judgment, without the shadow of false accusations. Richard stood frozen, watching the scene unfold. The mighty billionaire, used to controlling boardrooms and commanding respect, had been silenced by the raw truth of his child's pain. News of the trial spread like wildfire. Headlines screamed, "Billionaire exposed by daughter's testimony." Public opinion turned sharply against Richard. Business partners severed ties. Stock prices plummeted. His empire shook on fragile ground. But Grace wanted none of the limelight. She returned quietly to her modest apartment on the city's edge, where neighbors greeted her with open arms. For weeks, she had been whispered about, judged, even shunned. Now she was welcomed back with respect, her dignity restored. Lily visited her often, sometimes sneaking away from her father's guarded mansion to sit in Grace's kitchen. They would drink hot cocoa, laugh softly, and sometimes cry. "You're the only one who ever really saw me," Lily confessed one evening. "Dad cared more about what people thought of him than what I felt inside. But you were always there." Grace stroked her hair, fighting back tears. "Family isn't always about blood, Lily. Sometimes it's about who stands by you when the world falls apart." The legal battle that followed stripped Richard of custody. He was ordered into rehabilitation and anger management, his empire left in tatters. For the first time, he stood not as a billionaire, but as a man forced to face his failures. As the months passed, Lily began to heal. With therapy, the love of Grace, and the quiet support of her mother who returned upon hearing the news, she rebuilt her sense of self. The bruises faded, but the strength she discovered remained. Grace, too, found new purpose. Her story inspired countless others: domestic workers, single mothers, people of color who had faced unfair judgment because of prejudice or power imbalance. Community leaders reached out, and Grace became a voice for justice, reminding the world that truth and love could rise above lies and power. One afternoon, as the sun streamed through her small apartment window, Lily hugged Grace tightly. "You're not just my maid," she said softly. "You're my family, and one day when I'm older, I'll tell the world what you did for me." Grace smiled through tears. "You already did, sweetheart. You saved me too." The story of a billionaire's fall and a maid's vindication was not just a courtroom drama. It was a lesson etched into the hearts of all who heard it, that courage, no matter how small the voice, can shatter the walls built by fear and lies. And in the end, it was not wealth, nor power, but truth and love that stood tallest in the courtroom of life.